Good morning. This is Pastor Barbara, aka Preacher with Parrots. Today is the 22nd of March, 2015. We're live on iVlog.tv with our Sunday morning Bible study. Sunday mornings, I speak about whatever I would like to speak about. Sunday evenings, we're in the New Testament, and Wednesday evenings, we're in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, we happened to mention last Wednesday, as we are right at the end of Solomon's reign, and we had a prophecy that a prophet spoke to Solomon's head servant. And as part of Solomon's punishment for not serving God, and this was a result of the fact that he had 700 wives and 300 concubines, and few of them were Israelites. Most of them were from other countries. And because he wanted to make nice with Egypt, he married the daughter of the Pharaoh. And of course, all these wives served other gods. And his being nice to them, he served other gods with them. Okay, I don't comment too much, but you go ahead and comment, and feel free to chat among yourselves over on iVlog while I'm on YouTube, because that's fine. We were identifying who one of our guests was. It was kind of cute the way we went about it. Anyway, the punishment for Solomon serving other gods and failing to serve God after God had blessed him, and he had the largest amount of land that he was governing, and he was the most respected man in the world at that time. And he started out well, David's son. God said, this will not happen during your reign, because, you know, Moses and David were very special to God. They were men who had many opportunities not to serve him, and David did have an unusual time when he sinned with Bathsheba and managed to get Bathsheba's wife or husband killed. Certainly not the best years of his life, but he always came back and served God. And his heart was always serving God, even though he did sin on a few occasions. But so, not to bring David into Solomon's sin, God said, I'm not going to do this as though it were part of your reign, because you are David's son. And he was often referred to as the son of David, or the king's son. So he said, I'm going to have it happen to your offspring who will rule next. So what was going to happen was this. The prophet told King Solomon's son, you, or King Solomon regarding his son, he will not reign over the 12 tribes like you have. Well, actually, there were 11 tribes that had land. The Levites worked in the temple as priests, high priests, musicians, singers, trumpet players, doorkeepers, high priest. And to do anything at all in the temple, you had to be a part of the tribe of Levi. The only other tribe then was the tribe of Judah. The prophet told the servant of the king, actually, he took off his robe and he cut it into 12 pieces. And he took 10 pieces and he gave them to the servant. He says, I'm going to give you 10 tribes of your boss's country. And only these two, one didn't have any land, will be part of his kingdom, or what you will be known for in posterity. Today's lesson is during that particular time. What happened was another person was given the 10 tribes of the north. They were referred to as the northern tribes, sometimes as Israel, and sometimes as Samaria, because that was their capital. What was going to be given to Solomon's son, King David's grandson, was going to be Judah and, of course, the Levites. They would be sometimes referred to as the south, sometimes as Judah, because that was their capital. Something unusual about this division, what we've been studying now of the 3 kings of Solomon, of David, this was known as the United Kingdom because all of Israel, the 12 tribes, were united. This period of time that followed that period in history is known as the divided kingdom. In that divided kingdom, the Bible that I'm teaching from, I guess it's not this one, I'm using in this study the Reese's Chronological Bible, because it gives us all of the events in the Bible, but it gives them in the chronological order in which they occurred. So we're talking about Israel. And this happened, and then that happened, and then that happened, and then when we get to the divided kingdom, we're going to, the page of the Bible is going to be, maybe I can find it here, is going to be divided, and 1/2 of the page is going to be for the northern kingdom, and 1/2 is going to be for the southern kingdom. When a number of years go by, the northern kingdom ceases to exist, because I'm looking in a different Bible here, which is not in the chronological order. I can't find that for you. It's not really important. Now, this is the time that this is taking place in. The kingdom has been divided. The north never has a king that serves God. Therefore, the king never encourages the people to serve God. Therefore, they don't. They break all of God's commandments, one of which was marry within your faith, which meant don't marry people from other countries, but marry other Israelites so that you will serve God. And what happened to Solomon will not happen to you. On the other hand, the southern tribe, 2 tribes or 1 tribe, half of the time they had kings that served God, and half of the time they had kings that didn't serve God. During the times their kings served God, the people served God, and everything went well. When the king would die and a king came in that didn't serve God, then God didn't bless them and things didn't go well for the land. We're in that period of time now. We're in the kingdom of the south that does serve God. Their king is named Jehoshaphat. there were three countries that when Moses and Joshua were trying to get the people into the promised land, never would cooperate with them, was always at war with them, was always making problems throughout history with them. One was Edom, which now is about where Jordan is. One was Moab. That's where Ruth's daughter-in-law, who married Boaz, whose grandson was King David. A lot of history comes into this particular part. These three countries, as they always have been, are now coming against Israel. They would fight Israel for no reason at all. If they needed one, they'd make one up. After this, the Moabites, the Ammonites, together with some of the, now they call them Mennonites. Actually what they are the people who lived on Mount Seir. So they're the Moabites, the Ammonites, and the people who lived on Mount Seir. King finds out a vast multitude from beyond the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is in the southern part, which would put them closer to Moab, southern part of Israel. A vast multitude from beyond the Dead Sea and from Edom have come to fight against you. And they're already in Hasan Tamar, that is, in Gadi. Jehoshaphat was afraid. So he resolved to seek the Lord. Jehoshaphat's the king. He hears three enemies are coming together against him. So he's a good king. He knows that he has to seek the Lord. This gets very interesting and very unbiblical. So he proclaimed a fast for all of Judah. Now you would think the prophet would proclaim a fast. But no, it's the king. King Jehoshaphat says, we got trouble coming. We got to fast and pray. So he proclaimed a fast for all Judah who gathered to seek the Lord. They even came from all the cities of Judah. So they didn't just from the bigger cities, but from the whole southern part of Israel, Judah. They come to seek the Lord. Now, you would think that it's going to be one of the priests that God is going to call on to get them out of their trouble, right? Not at all. Very unusual. Jehoshaphat stood in the assembly of Judah and Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the main city. Judah was the name of the tribe. In the Lord's temple before the new courtyard, and he said, this is his prayer, Lord God of our ancestors, are you not the God who is in heaven? And do you not rule over all kingdoms of all nations? Because obviously we've got three nations, three other kingdoms that are joining together to come against us. Power and might are in your hand. This is part of his prayer. And no one can stand against you. Are you not the God who drove out the inhabitants of the land before your people Israel, and who gave it forever to the descendants of Abraham, your friend? Abraham was known as a friend of God. Continues his prayer. He recognizes, three countries are coming against us. We are out of luck if you don't help us. They have lived in the land and have built you a sanctuary. And your name has your name, God's house, the house of Jehovah. These people that you have given this land to are living there, and they've built you a house. If disaster comes on us, whether it's sword that would be another country fighting them, or judgment. Now that could be God doing something to them, such as pestilence or famine. Either something comes and eats all your crops, or all your animals die, or your crops don't grow. If anything happens, whether you bring judgment on us or if it's our enemies, we're in trouble. We will stand before this temple and before you, for your name is in this temple. We will cry out to you, because in our distress you will hear and deliver us. He continues this prayer. Now here are the Ammonites, the Moabites, and the inhabitants of Mount Seir. You did not let Israel invade them when Israel came out of the land of Egypt. I mean, one of them had the idea and said, God, could we sort of just, you could help us and we could take them over? God didn't let them. He had a particular place for them. But Israel turned away from them and did not destroy them. We behaved ourselves. Look how they repay us by coming to drive us out of your possession that you gave us as an inheritance. You gave us the Holy Land. Now they want to drive us out of it. Our God, will you not judge them? God, aren't you going to do something to them? For we are powerless before this vast multitude that comes to fight against us. We do not know what to do, but we look to you. Now, this is how God answers. And because I was a music major in Bible college for a year and a half before I was called to preach, there's a little musical interlude in here that interested me right away, and I caught on right away without having to go to any Bible dictionaries or commentaries or anything to figure out what happened. I knew immediately what was happening. This is God's answer. All Judah was standing before the Lord with their infants, their wives, their children. They came from all over, and it was, they brought everybody. I mean, it wasn't just the men that came. The wives came. If the wives came, obviously the children came too. In the midst of the congregation, the Spirit of the Lord came on Jehaziel, son of Zechariah, son of Benina, son of Jael, son of Menina, a Levite. Okay, so now we know he's part of the tribe of Levi. That means he's got something to do with temple worship. He either mops the floor, he blows a trumpet, he makes the bread, he puts the oil in the menorah. He's a Levite. Now, that says what tribe he is, but within each tribe, they've got families. Now, before David died, he gave instructions, although Solomon was the one who carried them out. It was David's plan that was followed, and David had a plan. This family is going to do this. This family of the Levites is going to do this. Another family of the Levites are going to do something else. A Levite from Asaph's descendants. He just spoke up. I guess God gave him a message. And he said, listen carefully, all Judah, and you inhabitants of Jerusalem, and King Jehoshaphat. This is what the Lord says. What I mentioned earlier about the musical part, it's not written in this particular version. It's written in all the other Bibles, but they have, for some reason, it's not here. So what I said doesn't really make sense to you. He was of the family of Asaph. there were two families that were involved in the music portion of the temple. Aman, Heman, Aman, and Asaph, Asaph. They had to do with the music. Asaph had to do with the singers. This guy that the Lord's talking to now, and he's going to talk to the people, he's from the family of Asaph, which were the singers. So he was a choir director or a singer. Listen carefully, all Judah, and your inhabitants in Jerusalem, and King Jehoshaphat. This is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid or be discouraged because of this vast multitude. For the battle is not yours. And that's the title of the sermon. The battle is not yours. Yeah, there's a big battle ahead. More people, more powerful. They've all been before you before. You wanted to just have their land along with yours, but God says, no, I have a certain land I have for you, and that's the land I'm going to give you. Tomorrow, you go down against them, and you will see them coming up the ascent of Sis. They're going to come up a little hill. You will find them, now this is going to be tomorrow, you will find them at the end of the valley facing the wilderness of Jeru. You do not have to fight this battle. You're going to win. And in parentheses, they're going to win big. But you don't have to fight. How do you win a battle? How do you go to war without fighting? Position yourselves. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The Lord is going to save you. That's what salvation is. When we receive salvation, we say we're saved or we're born again. He said, just get in the position. I'm going to tell you where to stand and what to do. And see the salvation of the Lord. Watch while God helps you win. He is with Judah and Jerusalem, the city and the tribe. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Tomorrow, go out to face them, for the Lord is with you. We're in verse 18 now. By the way, this is the 20th chapter of 2nd Chronicles. Jehoshaphat bowed with his face to the ground, and all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem fell down before the Lord to worship him. Now, it wasn't the king, it wasn't the prophet, it wasn't a priest. It was a member of the choir that God chose to give this message to. Obviously, the people recognized the message was from God, regardless of who was speaking it. Because all the inhabitants of Jerusalem fell down before the Lord to worship him. Then the Levites from the sons of the Kohathites, and the Kohathites, these are more musicians, they stood up to praise the Lord of Israel, shouting in a loud voice. Everything they did in the Old Testament was loud. Now we go to verse 20. In the morning they got up early and went out to the wilderness of Tekoa. And as they were about to go out, Jehoshaphat stood and said, now Jehoshaphat's going to speak to Judah and Jerusalem. Hear me, Judah, and you inhabitants of Jerusalem. This is his pep talk before they go out for the big game. Believe in the Lord your God, and you will be established. Believe in his prophets, and you will succeed. Then he consulted with the people, and he appointed some to sing for the Lord, and some to praise the splendor of his holiness. And they went out in front of the armed forces and kept singing. By the way, this Asaph, the one who was the head of that, he wrote 3 Psalms. I'm going to read just a couple of verses. One of the Psalms he wrote was Psalm 50. Some of what he wrote in Psalm 50 was this: Our God is coming, he will not be silent. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and God is a judge. Verse 15, he says, Call on me in the day of trouble, and I will rescue you, and you will honor me. Whoever sacrifices a thank offering honors me, and whoever orders his conduct, I will show him the salvation of God. That was written by Asaph, the head of the singers in the tribe. He says, this is what you're going to sing. Give thanks to the Lord, for his faithfulness is forever. Give thanks to the Lord, for his faithfulness is forever. Give thanks to the Lord. He puts the singers up in front. Remember I mentioned a while ago that David had arranged for Bathsheba's husband to be killed? How did he do that? Well, as king, he was over the military. And he had the military arranged for him to be put in the front of the battle. So when the enemy comes, who do you see first in the front of the battle? That's who you kill first. You've already got your ammunition ready. You've got your javelin. You've got your bow and arrows. You've got whatever they used in those days to fight with. But the ones up in front are the ones that are going to die. They're the ones that before you can finish off the enemy, because it's going to take you a little while to finish them all off, even if you're going to win. Some of the ones up in the front are going to die first. So who does he put up in front? Not the people with bows and arrows. Not the people with slingshots. Not the people with javelins. Puts the choir. And he gives them their song. Give thanks to the Lord, for his faithful love endures forever. Okay. The moment they began, their shouts and praises. So all the people walking behind are shouting and praising God, and the choir is singing. The moment they began their shouts and praises, the Lord set an ambush against the Ammonites and Moabs and the inhabitants of Seir who came to fight against Judah, and they were defeated. The Ammonites, the Moabites, turned against the people from Mount Seir. Got 2 groups over here and 1 over here. 3 of them, they were going to fight against Judah. Well, these 2 killed this one off. They just fighting. Instead of fighting Judah, they fought the people that came with them to help them fight against Judah. and they completely annihilated them. When they had finished with the inhabitants of Seir, this is how we started out, right? This one goes away. Now these two fight. The Ammonites and the Moabites turned against the inhabitants of Seir and completely annihilated them. When they finished with the inhabitants of Seir, they helped destroy each other. So what has Judah done so far? They've sung, they've shouted, and they've praised the Lord. Because the Lord told them from the beginning, the battle isn't yours. Don't worry about how it will be fought, because you are not going to do the fighting. Don't worry about planning what you're going to do, because I'm doing the planning, tells God to them. And they completely destroyed each other. When Judah came to a place overlooking the wilderness, because they're barely at this little summit where all this takes place. I mean, they're back here. They haven't even gotten yet where they can look down and see what's going on. And the fight is taking place. It's not happening where they are. When they get to a place overlooking the wilderness and they look at the multitude where the corpses lying on the ground, nobody had escaped. Usually in a battle, if you read other battles in the Bible and historical battles of that time, when somebody is along on the outside edge and they can see that they're losing and they're around the corners, they take off. Nobody took off. They all fought each other until the second one hit the last one, and I guess they must have hit each other together because they were all dead. Then Jehoshaphat and the people went to gather the plunder. The plunder is sometimes called the spoil. There's another name for it. But whatever is left over. I jokingly always talk about the people with the gold in their teeth. But people that were wealthy wore clothing made of fancy, expensive fabric. That was always taken because it can be unseamed and used to make other beautiful clothing. They had always swords and special headgear and whatever they were fighting with, plus their clothing, their shoes, their boots, any jewelry they might be wearing. I don't know what they had on. But in a war, whoever wins takes the plunder. If any people had been left remaining, hi Gorby, just noticed over there that you were there. Good to see you. If there had been any people left, they would have been taken and they would have become slaves. That's what you did in those days. The plunder or the spoil, you kept, it was valuable. If it was money, then it was money. If it was something that could be made into something or that could be sold, it was valuable. But people were also taken as slaves, except God didn't want his people intermarried, and if you intermingle, you will intermarry. He didn't want his people intermarried with people who were not of the Jewish faith. So that is probably, my thinking, the reason none took off. They were all killed. At any rate, had any been remaining, that is normally what is done. Jehoshaphat and his people went to gather the plunder. They found among them an abundance of goods on the bodies, stuff, And valuable items, rings, bracelets, jewelry, belts. So they stripped them until no one could carry anymore. There were 3 countries doing battle. Over here, we have just those from Judah and Jerusalem. All these people gathered up all they could carry. Now, granted, how much can you carry? I mean, you're not going to carry anything over 50 pounds, right? And there were a lot of people. But those from Judah and Jerusalem, they gathered up all they could carry till they couldn't carry anymore. They were gathering the plunder for 3 days because there was so much. Well, they had to get it from the border where the people had come up to fight them and where they were. They had to get it back into Israel. And then they assembled in the valley of Beruka. And on the 4th day, when they had taken everything of value from the Moabites, the Edomites, and the people who lived in Mount Seir, then that's the place where they gathered. For 3 days, they took everything of value away. On the 4th day there, they had a revival. My language. On the 4th day there, they praised the Lord. Therefore, the place is still called the Valley of Beruka today. All the men of Judah and Jerusalem turned back with Jehoshaphat as their lead, returning joyfully. I'll bet they had joy. Joyfully, thank you. How many days? How many? 3 countries were fighting against them, and 3 days it took them to gather up the stuff. And then they rejoiced over the battle with their enemies. They came to Jerusalem, to the temple, with harps, lyres, and trumpets. There are 3 kinds of musical instruments, and there's only one kind that's not mentioned here. This is what they didn't mention. They mention harps. Those are stringed instruments. Lyres, Lyres. Those are also stringed instruments, but they're more like guitars, banjos, that type of thing. And trumpets, they're wood instruments that you blow into. Everything is either done on a string, because that gives you tones. When you put your finger down on a string on a guitar, let's say that this is the neck of your guitar, and the sounding box is here, and there are strings here. When you put your finger on a string, you have shortened the string, because now instead of the string going all the way here, by putting your finger there, it's as if the string only went to here. And so you have made the tone higher. And if you put your hand farther up, you're even, so you can pick out da, 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 da. I think I do have another instrument that I can get. Just a minute. If I'd have thought about it, I'd have brought it over here. The other kind that doesn't have strings, you see, 3 kinds of music, 2 kinds you can play a melody on. The other one is only for noise. No sound. The other one is something you blow into. The shorter the pipe, the louder the noise. The shorter the string, the higher the sound. And you get to the longer ones, or the string that this string is just to hold it together. But as you make it long, you get a deeper one. Now, if you're playing just something, let's say this right here is your flute, or your oboe, or your saxophone, or your clarinet, you can put holes in it. If you cover up the holes, you are playing a long, low note. But if it had a hole and you uncover it, you are shortening it, just like you're shortening it if you put your finger over the string of a guitar. And so those are the ways on a wind instrument that you make melody. Who's sounding off? Is this the lovebirds? Yeah, it's the lovebirds. They don't usually make this much noise. One bird survived. Yeah. Oh yeah, I play it. I don't have that much strength. I don't have that much energy in me now to play it, but I do. I played Amazing Grace very well. I don't play other things very well. And then they've got the instruments here. Now here you got your drum, which was big in Bible days. You got your tambourine, which was very big in Bible days. And anything that you get by something hitting something else. Your hand hits a drum, and you get a noise. Not a do, re, mi, fa, sol noise, just a noise. With this, you have one piece of metal hits the other piece of metal, and you get a noise. So you got three kinds of instruments. A piano is different because it is part being hit. Your finger hits the key, which hits the string. So it's part string and part not string. But except for the piano, it's either something hitting something, which has no pitch, or it has something you blow through, which depending on how long it is, how low it is, and so forth. Okay, well, let's finish this. We're almost through. So, they come to the city of Jerusalem where the temple is. They go to church. They have a revival. Well, who wouldn't? And they get out their harps, their lyres, and their trumpets. They don't get out any timpani. They don't get out any rhythm. They're called rhythm instruments because you can make rhythms on them, but you can't make pitch. The terror of God was on all the kingdoms of the lands that heard about that the Lord fought against the enemies of Israel throughout even the New Testament, but throughout the Old Testament. You keep reading where people said, oh, we heard about Moses. We heard about you getting out, about you running out from Pharaoh. We know what your God does, so we're not messing with you because we don't want to mess with your God. The terror of God was on all the kingdoms of the lands that they heard that the Lord fought against the enemies of Israel. Then Jehoshaphat's kingdom was quiet, for God gave him rest on every side. Every time they had a king that served God, they had rest, they had peace. And this is a summary now. We've got about 6 more verses to read. Jehoshaphat became king over Judah. He was 35 when he became king. He reigned for 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Asuba, daughter of Shehi. Now, normally we don't get the mother's names. I'm guessing Just guessing. No reason to believe this way. But simply because it tells you his mother was Asuba and she was the daughter of Shilgi, that maybe the father's name was common. Because a person, there were no last names. So to identify which John, which David, which James, they just simply said either where they were from or who their father's name was. All right. He walked in the way of Asa his father. Asa his father died of a foot problem, which it's rather amusing, I think. We'll get to on Wednesday night when we get to that portion. He did not turn away from it, but what he did was right in the Lord's sight. However, the high places were not taken away. This is the problem. The people had not yet determined in their hearts to worship the gods of their ancestors. If they had, think about what the government's trying to do to the Christians now in our country. Even though I realize here on our network we have people from other countries, not just the U.S., but mostly from the U.S. If we intended to serve God and only God and never serve a false god, we would take permits away from every non-God organization for building churches, shrines, Muslims, whatever they built, and we would protect what the religion that was in power when this country was founded, we would protect them. Instead, we're doing the opposite. We're letting as many people from any country serve any god and build any kind of a house of worship they want to, no problem. And we're trying to take the Ten Commandments. Now, it's been a long time since we've kept the Ten Commandments. Jesus took the Ten Commandments and brought them down to 2. And still they're a part, not of our history, but of the history of our nation. So they're important to us. He said they didn't take the high places down. Remember, Solomon left the high places so his wives would have a place to worship. Since worshiping false gods was not allowed, there was no reason for them to ever have these high places. They should have been destroyed and taken them down. That's the one thing that Jehoshaphat didn't do. You say, well, so he didn't destroy some god's place of worship. No big deal. Well, it's not a big deal, but it is a little deal. It isn't what destroyed them, but it led to other things that did. However, the high places were not taken away. The people were not determined in their hearts to worship the God of their ancestors. After this, Judah's king Jehoshaphat made an alliance with Israel's king Ahaziah, who was guilty of wrongdoing, and he formed an alliance with him to make ships to go to Tarshish. Saul was from Tarsus. And they made the ships in Ezion-Geber, a place obviously on the coast where they made ships. Then Eliezer the son and gives them prophesied against Jehoshaphat, saying, because you formed an alliance with Ahaziah, the Lord has broken up what you have made. So the ships were wrecked and we're not able to go to Tarshish. And from there we go on to another part. This was only a sermon. This was not part of a whole Bible study. That part of the Bible study we'll get to, I'm guessing, in about 3 or 4 months. Or maybe 2 or 3 months when we get to the divided kingdom. Right now we're still in the United Kingdom. Give me just a second. I'm going to say Goodbye to those that are watching us on YouTube. Until the next video, blessings on you.